Don't you know that we're gonna tell it, we're gonna tell it, yes we will, how we have overcome. Don't you know that we're like that? Oh, but I can, come on and sing, God, but I can. Oh, with the morning, don't you know that all of us, yes we are gathering. Don't you know that we're gonna tell it, yes we will, how we have overcome. Yes, we will understand it better by and by. Yeah, I'm back on. Let us turn to page 613. After which we're going to loose the speaker. Let him let that fire out of his bones. He got shut up in there. He been trying to hold it in all week. Yes, sir. Yes, we're gonna let him loose. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Hold on to God's unchanging hand. Boy, ain't that something? God's hand is unchanging. Yes, sir. Some of y'all's hand, well, all of y'all's hand. I don't want to have none of y'all's hand. I want God's hand. I don't trust y'all's hand. But God's hand is unchanging. It's unchanging. But you got to believe it. Yes, sir. Right? Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Time is filled with swift transition. None of earth unmoved can be your hope something eternal. Everybody ought to hold on to God's unchanging. Come on, everybody, hold on to his hands, to my God's unchanging hand. Everybody ought to hold on to my God's unchanging. Well, if you do, you build your hopes on things in eternal. Everybody hold on to God's unchanging hand. Will now trust in him who will know it all and whatsoever years may bring. Well, here my earthly forsake on where I have stepped to him, more closely to him, cling. Everybody, let's hold on to my God's unchanging. Come on, everybody, hold on to his hands, to my God unchained. Well, I know you can be real, your hope on things in eternal. Hold on to God's unchanging hand. Well, when your journey is completed, and if to God you have been true and fair and bright, the home in glory, you're enraptured soul. Well, come on and hold on to my God's unchanging. Come on, let's hold on to my God's unchained. Well, if you do, you can be in your hopes on things eternal. Let's hold on to God's unchained. Well, everybody, let's hold on to his hand. Hold on to my God's unchained. Well, everybody, let's hold on to his hand. Yes, to my God unchained. Well, if you do, you can build your hopes on things in eternal. Everybody ought to hold to God's unchanging hand. Everybody ought to hold on to his hand. Hold on to my God. Well, everybody ought to hold on to my God's unchanging hand. If you do, you can be in your hopes on things in eternal. Everybody hold on to God's unchanging. Everybody gonna hold on to God's unchanging hand. Everybody gotta hold on to this hand. God's unchanging hand. Build your hopes on things eternal. Hold to God's unchanging hand.
Amen, amen, amen. Brother Hollis got back up here and took it on home. I think it was, I don't remember the artist. I think it might have been James Brown. Talking about take it to the bridge. Some of y'all know. Brother took it to the bridge and had us drinking. Appreciate both of these brothers for leading us in our songs this morning. I'm grateful to them. Grateful for our brothers who have conducted our worship in other ways this morning. We're grateful for the presence of all of you that have come as we come together on this Lord's Day to worship our God in spirit and in truth. It's always good to come together for worship. It's always good to have the opportunity to come and get our minds readjusted. Somewhere I read, I think it's one of those Psalms, some of you might know what I'm talking about, where David said, I'd almost slipped up. Things were just falling apart in life. And then he said, until I came to the sanctuary, the house of God. Then he was able to see things straight. By the time we get done with Monday through Saturday, we need our vision corrected. We need to be able to see right, because this world will show us things that are just topsy-turvy and upside down, and we won't know which way is up. But when we come together, we're able to get our eyes readjusted. God gets to putting us in the chair and getting us to look at the right letters and making sure we're seeing with 2020 a spiritual vision. I want to invite you this morning to Psalm 2. Acts chapter 17 was read, and we want to work from there, but also would like to invite you to the second Psalm as we investigate the Word of God for the next few minutes. The second Psalm reads, beginning at verse number 1, why do the heathen rage, and the people plot a vain thing? The kings of earth set themselves, and the rulers take counsel together against the Lord and against his anointed, saying, let us break their bonds in pieces and cast away their cords from us. He who sits in the heavens shall laugh. The Lord shall hold them in derision. Then he shall speak to them in his wrath and distress them in his deep displeasure. Yet I have set my king on my holy hill of Zion. We are rapidly approaching November the 8th, 2016. This date is significant for several reasons. Most of us know it to be Election Day. It is the day that Americans come out to participate in the selection of the next president of our country. This is a privilege that many males have had since the beginning of the country. This is a right that women had to wait until 1920 to exercise. This is a right that African Americans were given in 1869, but could not exercise until 1965 or 8. In just a few weeks, we get the opportunity, male and female, young and old, to choose who we want to be president. Or do we? This morning, I thought I'd share a word with you regarding the election. However, I'm not merely focused on the presidential election. I'm speaking about how we elect to live our lives every day. You see, we all have a choice. It's a very simple choice. And yet, it's the same choice that mankind has had since God made Adam and Eve. Amen. I want to give you some things to consider as you approach the polls. I want to share some thoughts with you before you make your daily choice in life's voting booth. Permit me to use as a subject the illusion of choice. The illusion of choice. All right. You know that illusion pretends to talk about that which isn't quite real. Right. It is something that we seemingly have the ability to do, but something that in reality we don't have such freedom. When we look at Psalm 2 and when we look at Acts 17, we learn some significant theological principles. The principle we learn right off is that God is sovereign. Amen. We learn that God will always be in control. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. His authority can never be diminished or overturned. All right. God is not just sovereign over the church. Right. God is sovereign over all. Come on, man. Come on, man. Even those who have yet to recognize, yes, sir, and willingly surrender to his sovereignty are still under it. Right. His authority remains absolute, yes, sir, and will never change. Amen. Now, the scriptures declare the sovereignty of God. Sovereignty is the fact that God has rule. Amen. He has control. All right. He has unchallenged authority. All right. Nobody can ever decide that he or she will vote to walk away from God, all right, and thereby be outside of God's authority. Uh-huh. He gives us a choice in life. Right. He gives us the choice to decide whether or not we will willingly surrender to him. Amen. All right. But I want you to know that even if we say we will not willingly surrender to him, he will still be in control. Yes, sir. Thus the illusion of choice. All right. Somebody says that the Bible gives us several examples of God's authority, and they're right. When we read Psalm 103 and verse 19, the Bible talks about how God's kingdom rules over all. When we read 1 Chronicles chapter 29, you might remember this was when the collection had been made for the building of the temple of God. You might remember how the great king got up and he talked about how so much had been collected and how blessed they were to collect so much money. People dug out of their personal treasure. The king dug out of his personal treasure and gave so greatly to God, and they collected such great riches. But then the king said, but wait a minute, all we did was give back to you what you gave to us in the first place. You don't own a dollar that God didn't give you. All right. You don't have a bank account that God is not ultimately in control of. All right. You don't own a home that God doesn't hold the real mortgage to. Every title on your car God has up in heaven. Even those material things, God has control over them all. But not only that, you don't breathe the breath of air that God didn't provide for you. You don't have lungs with God putting them in your body. You don't have anything that God didn't give from the beginning. And even when it comes to the paltry sum of money that we collect every Sunday, recognize that no quarter in your pocket came to you without it coming from God. So the Bible lets us know that God would say, if I were hungry, I wouldn't talk to you about it. I own a cattle on 1,000 hills. The very sun that you need to give you light, I threw it out there. Very moon that reflects it at night, I put it out there. Everything that you have in this world and the world itself, it all belongs to me. Here's a scientist that says, I looked in a telescope and saw other solar systems, and God says, those belong to me as well. Even the things you can't see are all in my control. God is a sovereign God. When the flood was ravaging the earth, when the hurricane wind swept this globe, when the continent-sized tidal waves buried the lands and mountains, when all flesh that moved on the earth died, it was at that time that God said, I made it all happen. I can turn the greatest sky blue. I can make it rain whenever I wanted to. I can build a castle out of a single grain of sand. Oh, God has the power to let the ship sail on dry land. He's got all the world in his hands. When we look at the sovereignty of God, we see historical illustrations. Pharaoh decided one day, when God sent Moses into town to say, let my people go, Pharaoh said, who is this God? These are my slaves. These are my people. I don't have to do anything. I'm the king of Egypt, until God took him 10 rounds and knocked him out. His arms were too short to box with God. He learned that the God of heaven is God over all. Not only that, Nebuchadnezzar thought that he was the big dog in town. He got cocky about himself, talked about all this great power that I have. Bible tells us in Daniel chapter number 4, God said, you think you all that? And a bag of chips? I take your sense away from you and make you live out in the forest like an animal. And Nebuchadnezzar finally came to his senses and recognized that the God of heaven put him on the throne. He learned that God is sovereign. God is in charge. There was a man by the name of Samson. He was the mightiest man known in that era. He had the strength of all types of powerful men. And he was given a commission by God to live as a Nazarite. But Samson got to feeling his muscles. He got to feeling his strength and his fame. And he walked away from the commandment God gave him. And he went out to try to fight one more time again. And he found himself bound and fettered and blinded and put in jail, grinding like an old woman. And he recognized, oh, it wasn't vitamin C that pumped me up. It wasn't me drinking beet juice with carrot juice on the side. It wasn't 1 a day or 6 a day. It was God who gave me the strength. Not only that, there was a man that God said, get up and go to Nineveh and preach the message that I give you. This man decided, I'm going to go in a different direction. He jumped on a boat and went another way. And God woke up the storm. And the storm tossed the ship back and forth. God had that man troubled, and the man was thrown overboard. And God did like Aquaman could never dream and called up a great fish to swallow that man and keep that man alive. And finally that man recognized, guess I better go to Nineveh. And all this is to testify that God lays before all of us a choice. But the choice is really an illusion. Because we either choose to do things his way and be blessed, or we refuse to do it his way and be cursed but it'll still be his way anyway.
That's right.
The illusion of choice.
Well,
We have to understand as we examine these thoughts together, how has God made us? What is free will in the first place? I'm sure you've heard it said, and I know I've said it several times, that God has given free will. Amen. Paul spoke to those people in the Areopagus. He spoke to them as very religious people. When you read Acts chapter number 17, Paul spoke in somewhat of a massive ancient court building in an area that the Romans had made their own. Paul had been in the corner, if you will, the market, talking about Jesus Christ. He had been declaring the power of Jesus Christ. You have to appreciate that Paul did this in a Roman-owned area where they thought Caesar was all powerful, where they worshiped Caesar as a god. And here Paul was talking about there's a new king in town. His name is Jesus Christ. These people heard Paul talk and they didn't like everything he said, but they thought it was curious enough to have him come and talk to the special group, the Brainiac Club. Paul got up in the court and he dealt with people. And as he began to speak, he said, I notice of all things that you are very religious. These people had a pantheon of gods that they worship. They worship Zeus, the father of all gods. Athene, the goddess of wisdom and patron of the city. Demeter, the goddess of vegetation and fertility. Apollo, the goddess or the god of light and music. Artemis, the sister of Apollo and the goddess of hunting and of good counsel. Aphrodite, the goddess of love. And then they had several others that they worship, including Cyprus and Isis and Ambrose, but not only them, even Onisis and the idea of Hercules. They worshiped all of them. They thought they had everything covered. In all of this, the people were under the illusion that they had a positive choice for who they served and how they lived based on that choice. But this was just an illusion. Paul proclaimed that the essence of law life is seen and joyfully experienced only when we choose to yield our will to God's will. Paul went on to say in Acts chapter 17, if you allow me to paraphrase, he said, God made all of us. From the beginning of humanity to now, God made us all, and he made us all from one blood. I've said before, so I say again, we ought not get caught up on the exterior about whether or not we're going to like a person.
Well, all right now.
We're living in a day and time in which we are very divisive.
Yes, sir.
We got people going around saying Black Lives Matter, and I understand that argument. We got saying Blue Lives Matter, and I understand that argument. We got people fighting on Democratic and Republican side, and I understand those arguments. But the fact of the matter is, these are just exterior things. What needs to be recognized is that all humanity is precious in the sight of God. And all of us need the same thing. We need blood. God made from one blood all nations of men. But not only did God do that, God has already determined what nation will live where, for how long, and when they'll be replaced by another nation. All right, son. All right. We haven't even been here 300 years. All right. 3,000 years other places have been, and even thousands or more others have been, and here we're just a neophyte of a nation. Right. And we think that we're the greatest nation in the world. That might be so militarily, but let me let you know something. This nation may not be here for your grandchildren to see. This nation may not be here for all of us to see before we leave this world. Because God has already determined America's end. God has already determined Russia's end. God has determined China's in and every other nation. We get territorial talking about these are our borders. This is our land. And we have a nerve to say, God bless us and nobody else. And God said, haven't you not read? I made all nations. Made all mankind of one blood. You have no right to hate another because they live across another border. You have no right to hate another because they look funny. You have no right to talk about how they speak funny. We must recognize that the funniness we recognize in others is the funniness they recognize in us. But he made all nations. And he determines how long they will be there. Somebody says, is there any historical example? I can't think of a better than what you see in the days of Daniel. When Daniel said, Nebuchadnezzar, you're a mighty king right now. But boy, you ain't going to last but so long. God's already determined to rise up another nation. It will take you over. And then God said to them, don't you get too cocky on yourself. He's going to raise up another nation to take care of them, and then he's going to raise up another. And in the days of those kings, talking about the Roman Empire, God said, I'm going to step in human flesh and show you what's uptown. That's the God we serve. He is a mighty God. And Paul went on to say why God has done what he has done. Why has God made mankind the way he has made mankind? Why has he already determined what nation will rule where and for how long? The Bible says he did all that so that we might seek the Lord. Did you not know that every human is born with a spiritual thirst? Every human is born with a spiritual desire. That's right. Mankind has been created in such a way that none of us will ever be completely satisfied in life until we get connected with God. Look at how we chase. We chase education. There's nothing wrong with education. There's nothing wrong with trying to get as far as you can in school. It's important to be that way if you're so inclined. But all the education in the world won't satisfy. There's something deeper we need. We chase it in professional jobs. There's nothing wrong with wanting to have a great job. There's nothing wrong with wanting to make $50, $70, $100, $600,000 a year. If you can get it, just remember my name. Nothing wrong with that. Remember Westview when you get blessed that way. We trying to get a building. Remember us. Drop a little bit in the basket. Well, shucks, drop a whole lot in the basket. Nothing wrong with that. But all the money in the world won't satisfy us. Some chase it by means of addictions. They go bed hopping. They go drug dropping. They go drink happy. And they try to get it and fulfill the need, but you can't get it that way. Then some try to get it in relationships. Going all over the world. I'm looking for Mr. Goodbar. I'm looking for Miss Goodbar. And we go from one relationship to another, and Hollywood's caught on to this. That's why they made that movie, Think Like a Man. And they got so much money off of that, they said, let's do it again. That's right. And they keep making movies like that with people in angst trying to find the right person. And if you watch that stuff long enough, even Tyler Perry got into it. All of them find this kind of stuff, and you have a happy ever after. You've seen that stuff. Oh yeah. But you don't get happily ever after in a relationship. You get happily ever after in a union with God. So perhaps it is a relationship, but it's a different one than what most people think about. This is why God has made the world the way in which he has. He wants men to seek the Lord. If haply they should find him. though he be not far from any one of us. God then made the world. He gave humanity free will, but this is how free will works. You and I get a choice. God says, I am completely in control, but I will give you a choice. We say, Lord, what is your choice? What choice do you give us? He says, you can either experience my power, my sovereignty in a blessed way, or you can think you're rebelling and you can experience my control in a cursed way.
Well.
Did not God say to Israel, I put before you this day good and evil, life and death. Choose life. Every day you and I wake up and go about life. God is saying, I give you a choice, but the choice is me or me.
Well.
You either choose to yield to me, and you'll see how great and how good I am, and you'll be under my control.
Yes, sir.
Or you'll choose to reject me and find out that you really can't. Because I'm still going to be in control. I'll either do it with you or with you. Either you enjoy the ride or you be in the back seat with a seatbelt on with wind in your jaws, but you still going. Because God is in control. You see, this is what I mean when I talk about the illusion of choice. You get to choose, I get to choose, but at the end of the day, God will get done what he wants to get done. And we can never step completely outside of his authority because he is God.
Yes.
Now, what does all this have to do with our contemporary times? Well, when we talk about the illusion of choice, when you and I think that we can serve the religion of our choice, we find it's just an illusion.
All right. Come on, son.
There are people today who promote anything and everybody but Jesus Christ.
Yes,
All right.
yes,
All right.
They promote Islam. I watched the Democratic convention the other day. I saw that scene where they had someone of Islamic faith give a beautiful testimony, and I respect that. But the fact of the matter is, the only way is Jesus Christ.
That's it, bro.
It says you ought to be sensitive to religious pluralism. I'm sensitive to the fact that every human is valuable in the sight of God.
Right.
But I'm aware of the fact that Jesus is the only way.
Yeah, man. Right, bro.
Only Jesus.
Yes, sir.
Only Jesus.
That's it.
Only Jesus
I know you're right.
is the way of the God of heaven.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Here they were in Athens. Here they were talking about we can serve this God, we got a monument to that God, so on and so forth. And here we are in America. We are the most religiously pluralistic that this country has ever been. When we have people that come from other countries, they often bring their religious practices and thoughts.
Right.
Everybody ought to be able to legally come into the country. But only Jesus is the way
Amen.
of salvation.
Right.
Don't care whether you be in America, whether you be in China, whether you be in Russia, whether you be in any other place of the world.
Amen.
The message of the Bible is the same.
Yes, sir.
Only give me Jesus.
Amen.
When we think we have another choice outside of Jesus, we have an illusion of choice.
Right.
When you and I think that we can follow our own will apart from God's will, that's the illusion of choice. There are people who go all over, I'm not religious. I don't care about any religious stuff. I live my own way. I'm my own God.
Yeah.
Don't you know that's just an illusion?
All right.
You might think you're getting away from God to do your own thing, but God says, I control this world.
Right.
Your life will never be blessed the way it ought to be blessed unless you follow me.
Uh-huh.
And even when you think you're not following me, I will still control how your life goes. God has made a moral world. And when people decide to reject the morals of God and say, I'm going to do my own thing and say, I'm not listening to God anymore, like in Psalm 2, the kings of the earth say, we will break his bonds and do what we want. God says, you think so? I will make every choice you make come to be futile until you realize who I am.
Right.
And you'll still be under my control, even when you thought you chose not to be.
Right.
When you and I think that we can ignore God's will with impunity, we are facing an illusion of choice.
All right.
And then finally, as we think about this lesson in respect of coming November the 8th, I would be remiss if I didn't try to share with you some counsel from the book of God about even that. When you think and I think that any human can successfully lead us to the path of other than what God wants, and we be blessed, we have an illusion of choice. Unless the Lord build the city,
All right.
they labor in vain that build it.
Yes, sir.
Brother Brown, should we decide whether we want a Democratic, Republican, or independent government, let me give you some parameters to work within. Let me remind you that government is only there to allow us to be able to serve God.
That's right. That's right.
That's the only purpose of government. That has always been the purpose of government. And I have to make this plain because we even find on the churches in the country people getting on sides and talking about we are Republican and we are Democrat. Sometimes I think we've lost our minds.
That's right.
That's right. That's right.
It's not Democrat or Republican or independent government that matters.
Right.
It's the government that allows us to serve God.
Right.
That's what matters. No wonder Paul wrote to Timothy in 1 Timothy chapter 2, he said, pray for everybody, but pray for the rulers.
Yeah. Right.
Pray for those in authority,
Right.
so that we may lead a peaceable life.
Right. Right.
Who should we vote for? Vote for government that will allow us to worship our God
Yeah. Right.
in the most peaceable way possible.
All right, brother.
That's not just for president. That's also for Congress. That's for the local government. Government is only there so that we can be able to serve our God. And whenever government loses its mind and tries to stop us from worshiping God, God will deal with that government. Romans chapter 13 tells us that government is a good thing.
Yeah.
It's a God-ordained thing, but remember the purpose.
Right.
It's there so that we can be allowed to serve God. And whenever that function ceases to be, I guarantee that government will cease to be.
Amen.
Brother Brown, should I vote for Hillary? Should I vote for the Donald? Should I vote for myself? Vote for peace, to serve God, and to live in the right way. Brother Brown, should America be first? God is first. Never forget, it's not I pledge allegiance to the flag. It's I pledge allegiance to my God.
Amen.
I can pledge allegiance to him wherever I am in this world.
Right, brother.
You ought to be able to pledge allegiance to him wherever you are in this world. Brown, we think we're going to call the government on you. You want to use my cell phone? God is God. No matter where we are. And when the church finally gets that right, we'll stop fighting over whether or not the Republicans are more godly or the Democrats are more godly. I can tell you right now, there's devils either way you go. The focus has got to be on God and our allegiance to him. Choose the candidate that you think is best focused on allowing us to stay focused on the rule of God. And so as we close this message, the illusion of choice. Yes, we have a choice. Our choice is God or God. God in a blessed way,
Yes, sir.
or God having his way even with us kicking and screaming. Choose life. Choose God. Choose faithfulness.
Jesus came into my life. Let me tell you about this man who can change your circumstance. It doesn't matter what your problem is or what you're going through. If he can change the sinner like me, he can do the same for you.
Wow, what a change. Since the Lord came in, he rearranged everything in your life that was oh so wrong. Now you living a good life, girl, you got it going on. But hold on, I remember when you used to be in the streets, club hopping, cussing, fighting, drinking, non-stopping.